Before we start today, this episode discusses youth suicide. Listener discretion is advised. We'll be careful with how we talk about it, but if this topic is raw for you right now, it's okay to skip this one and come back another day. And if you need support, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14 anytime. We'll share more resources at the end of this episode.
Okay, thanks, honey. A student dies by suicide and every parent at that school is asking the same question. What do I say to my child? Today, it's a listener question that we wish that we never had to answer, and some research that will genuinely surprise you because the kids we assume are least affected may actually be the most at risk. That's today on the Happy Families podcast. Stay with us. This is the Happy Families podcast, real parenting solutions every single day. It's Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. We're Justin and Kylie Coulson. Every Tuesday on the podcast, we answer your tricky questions. You can send them to us via podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. Just send us a voice note to podcasts at happyfamilies.com.au. Alternatively, go to happyfamilies.com.au, scroll down to where it says podcasts, press the record button, and start talking just like Elizabeth did with this question for today. And just before we get into today's question, it is a tricky topic. It's a heavy one. We are going to handle it with a lot of care. Before we play it, a reminder that we won't be going into any details about how anyone died, and we'd encourage you to follow that same principle in conversations at home. It matters, and we'll explain why shortly. A lot of research in today's pod, some of it brand new and world-leading, and it happens to be Australian. So let's hear from this beautiful mum first, and then we'll walk through it together.
Hi, Kylie and Justin. I'm a mum of 4 and a long-term daily listener. I just want to say thank you for the helpful and courageous work you do. I often feel like I'm walking through parenting alongside 2 incredibly knowledgeable and supportive people. I'm reaching out because there has recently been a suicide at my child's high school. My child is in year 7, and the student who sadly passed away was in the senior years. While the circumstances are still being investigated, it seems social media may have played a role based on what's been shared with the students. I'd really appreciate any advice on how to talk to my child about this heartbreaking situation. Are there specific resources or key talking points you'd recommend? Thank you so much.
Well, first of all, to Elizabeth and to any other mum or parent dealing with this, we're so sorry. This is tragic on every level.
Yeah, nothing more awful. Nothing more awful.
But I guess my first honest instinct as a mum is, as a child in year 7, having not associated with the child, do we even need to bring it up?
Yeah, so I get that. And the instinct to protect your child makes sense. It comes from a loving place. The research, Kylie, on this says exactly the opposite, that distance is not going to be protective. It may actually be problematic. There's a landmark study. It was conducted in 2013 by Swanson and Coleman, published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal, and over 20,000 young people were followed over time. They found 2 things that flip our intuitions upside down here. The first is this: after a schoolmate's suicide, whether a young person personally knew the student or not made no difference to their risk. Absolutely none. Everyone in that school community is affected.
It's curious. I remember going through similar things in my high school, and the taunt in the playground was you didn't even know them. Why were you so upset?
Right.
But you're suggesting that just because you didn't know them, that logic doesn't actually stick.
It doesn't. And I'm so glad you brought that up, because when we think back to our childhoods, if something like this did occur, even if you didn't know them, there's this profound contagion feeling that ripples across the entire student population of the school, regardless of the closeness of the connection. And the second part from this study, this Swanson and Coleman study that really stunned me, the youngest kids were the most affected. So 12 and 13-year-olds, this was from high schools, 12 and 13-year-olds who'd experienced the suicide of a schoolmate were around 6 times more likely to experience suicidal thoughts, even after the researchers did statistical analysis and controls for things like previous depression and anxiety. So we're talking about year 7, which is exactly Elizabeth's child, exactly this mum's child. The kids that we assume are furthest from it are carrying the most risk.
So that's alarming to me, 6 times more likely.
Right.
What does the data tell us? Why are these younger children so much more at risk?
Researchers think it's developmental. So they're old enough to understand death, but they don't have the psychological architecture, the psychological equipment, the resources to process it well. And they're the most susceptible to what we call contagion. I mentioned that a moment ago, the way that it ripples around the whole environment. And here's something that is, I think, the most shocking of all. That elevated risk lasted, in this research, about 2 years.
After the event.
After the event. So this conversation matters. It doesn't just matter in the days after. It matters in the months after. Literally, kids are still thinking about it 2 years later.
So here's what I know parents are thinking, because I'm thinking it. If I'm sitting with my 12-year-old child,
right,
and I ask them, have you ever had thoughts of suicide?
Yeah.
I'm so concerned. I'm going to put ideas in their head.
So this is the most common thing I hear on this particular topic. And it's also a myth, which is really hard for me to say because my intuition is the same as yours. Like, why am I talking about this? Surely if I just let it go, that's got to be better than putting it into their mind. But it's been tested really, really well. Now, science is always about testing, and one day this may be disproven, and maybe our intuitions will be right. But right now, the best data comes from Dazzy and colleagues, a 2014 study in psychological medicine. They reviewed, as a meta-analysis, 13 studies asking exactly that question. They looked at adolescents, they looked at adults, they studied general populations as well as at-risk populations. And in all 13 of those studies in this meta-analysis, not a single study found that asking increased suicidal thinking. If anything, the evidence actually pointed the other way. And one of those studies, a lady called Madeline Gould in her team, she surveyed over 1,000 high school students about suicidal thoughts and then checked on them 2 days later. And the kids who'd been asked whether or not they'd ever had thoughts of suicide were less distressed than the kids who weren't asked.
Less distressed?
Right.
How does that work?
Because someone finally opened the door. So asking communicates, as a parent, I can handle this topic, so you can bring it to me. And asking allows a child to reassure themselves that they're okay. It's like you're saying, have you ever had any thoughts like that? So your child's saying, oh, you feel strong enough to talk about it. But when the child says, no, I haven't, they actually feel the reassurance inside themselves because they're saying, no, I haven't. I'm actually okay. That's a reaffirmation to them that they're on board. So here's how the conversation starts for Elizabeth, who sent this question through to us and asked us what to say. The first thing is, don't lead with a lecture, lead with a question. So the question might be, what are the kids at school saying? And then just listen, because I promise you the kids at school are saying stuff. And then your job is to very gently correct rumors and then ask directly and really calmly, have you ever had thoughts like that? And if the answer is yes, you stay calm. You say, I'm really glad you told me that. Thank you. And you get support. And we'll talk about how to do that in just a sec. We need to take a quick break. And there are many other things that we need to talk about here.
So after the break, what do we actually say when they ask why it happened? The social media piece, because this mum specifically raised it, and the warning signs to watch for. Stay with us.
We're back. It's the Happy Families podcast.
Justin, the hardest question a child will ask. I'm getting a bit choked up already. Why did they do it? And in this case, there are already rumours flying around that social media played a role. So how does a parent answer?
Yeah, so first, I really like the way Elizabeth phrased the question. She was really careful in what she said. And I've got the quote here because I wrote it down. Social media may have played a role, is what she said. The technical term that we use is postvention. So a postvention is like an intervention, but after the fact. So you didn't intervene, but you are now intervening after it happened. So every postvention guideline that we have, and in Australia, that's the Mindframe guidelines, says don't give a simple single cause explanation. So you never say, oh, it was because of bullying or it was because of social media. Because, and think very carefully about what I'm going to say here, what that says to a vulnerable 13-year-old who's also having a hard time online, it frames suicide as an understandable response to a singular problem that he or she might have. So if you say it was social media and your child says, oh, I'm having a hard time on social media, all of a sudden we've got a single cause that led to a specific outcome. So suicide is, and we've got so much data on this, it's almost always the result of a confluence of factors converging, usually including inestimable psychological pain that the person couldn't see past. It's never just one thing that led to that person's passing.
So if I find myself in this position, what are the actual words that I say to my child?
Yeah, I would say something like this. I'd say, we don't fully know why, and we probably never will. What we do know is they were in a lot of pain, a huge amount of pain. And in that moment, they couldn't see another way through. But there are other ways through. There always are. And there always will be for you. And while we're on language, I think it's also important that we say died by suicide. We don't say committed suicide. That's the language of crime. It's saying this person committed a crime in the loss of their life. So died by suicide is a much more, I think, appropriate way to say it. And we never, ever, ever discuss how. We don't talk about the method. We don't talk about the location. That detail, based on the best research I've found, is the single most dangerous piece of information for other young people.
Which I guess brings us to social media, because that's where kids will start seeing rumours and the tribute page and often the really awful stuff about it.
Yeah. The social media context is just brutal, because when we think of social media, we think of that person who says, I miss you, gone forever. And you think about the tributes. But that's not just what happens. There are, especially kids, there are people that get online and they start rumours and they say the most horrid, brutal stuff. I'm going to brag a bit about some Australian research here for a sec. Jo Robinson is a researcher. Her team at Origin have developed the Chat Safe guidelines. They're the world's first evidence-based guidelines that help young people communicate safely online about suicide. And they did it with young people involved in the research. They published it in 2018. It was updated in 2023. It was trialled, and now it's used around the world. So for parents, there are three practical things. The first is, don't ban the phone. She's going to grieve with her peers online, whether you're there or not. I think it's better to sit alongside her while she scrolls. The second thing, help her to spot unsafe content, like anything discussing method, anything glorifying death. Report it together and watch the memorial pages. Because remembering a friend is healthy, and romanticizing their death, that's risky. So we want to be alongside them as they're going through it. Plus, if there are any problems, you can talk about them in the moment.
So earlier you said that the risk window is actually a lot longer than we would like to think it is.
24 months, yeah.
So what should Elizabeth and any other mum who is concerned about their child be watching for over the next coming months?
So this is going to sound really, really generic and really general, but first off, we would expect that there may be some grief, depending on how close your child was. And even if they're not close, they may still just grieve the loss and try to comprehend it. So I'd be looking for sadness. I'd be watching out for the questions that they're asking. Maybe there's some sleep issues. After you get through that initial stage, I'm watching over the subsequent months for withdrawal from friends, giving away something that's treasured. That can sometimes be an indication that your child's got some plans. Talking about being a burden, big changes in eating and sleeping and mood, or an ongoing preoccupation with the student who's died. So they're the main things that I'd be looking for. I just thought of another script as well that I should have mentioned before. Here's another script that every child needs to hear. If a friend ever tells you that they're thinking about suicide, that's a secret that you don't keep. Mm-hmm. You tell me or another adult straight away. That's how you show that you love them. And I bring that up because everybody knows, we've talked about it on the podcast before, when we lost my nephew in 2023, I can't believe it's been that long already. It's almost 3 years, at the age of 20, to suicide. He told a friend, and I don't have any malice or ill will towards his friend. His friend did what teenage boys do. He said, I've got you, bro. I won't tell anyone. Thanks for telling me. He thought that was enough, that he had that confidant, and he really needed to tell an adult. He needed to tell a loved one, because a week later we lost Logan. So to me, that's a vitally important script.
So understanding that this is a school community challenge. This is something that, you can't underestimate the ripple impact that has occurred.
Yeah.
What would you be wanting from a school right now?
So there's actually pretty good evidence behind school postventions. And in Australia, Headspace School Support will help any secondary school after a suicide. They'll do that for free. So I would say that Elizabeth can contact or email the school and ask what postvention support is in place. That's probably all I can recommend. It's certainly something that the school wants to address in a productive way.
So resources, let's send parents places to go.
Yeah, so we'll put all these resources and everything else that we've talked about in the podcast in the show notes. Kids Helpline, 1-800-55-1800. That's for young people 5 to 25. And they'll also support worried parents as well. There is a parent line. There's Lifeline, 13 11 14. There's the suicide callback service, 1300 659 467. There's 13Yarn for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families. The Chat Safe parent resources at origin.org.au. There's also something that we found helpful in our family, Standby. They offer support after suicide for anyone who's bereaved. And if your child was close to the student or you're seeing any of those warning signs, I'd say just go to the GP. They're kind of like your front door. They can give you a mental health care plan, Headspace, school psychologists, links to everything in the show notes.
So to Elizabeth, thank you for trusting us with this tricky question. Clearly, you love your daughter. And I think the most important thing to remember is the fact that you're asking means that you're exactly where you need to be right now.
Yeah.
With your daughter.
Yep.
And working through this together.
Walk towards conversations, not away from them. Ask the direct question, stay calm, and keep asking gently for as long as it takes. Tough one to get through today, Kylie. We don't talk about this sort of topic very often, but it matters, and hopefully this has been a helpful conversation. The Happy Families podcast is made possible by our team, Justin Rulon, production engineering, Mim Hammonds, admin and other support. We will link to resources in the show notes. And today, hug your kids a little tighter.